Hello, I'm Doran Ellen Beldotan in Svat. Still. I did decide to get this video out because I can't think of a better time to speak about immortality than on the eve of Yom HaKippurim during a pandemic. How's that for protest, huh? And so we'll speak about some of the signs that we have entered into the world of truth, which is one and the same as immortality, and that is in a body. Before I do, there were a couple of points that I should have made in earlier videos, and I'd like to make them herein with God's help. One is how we should regard current events. What we call current events are always versions of the one truth that remains unchanged. It's the same truth, it's the same messages, it's the same knowledge, but it's mixed up in a kaleidoscopic kind of a way so that the depths of that truth come to the surface and can be revealed and distinguished from the totality. They become perceptible as our current events. The one truth is a totality that really doesn't allow for the distinguishing of one perception from another. Everything is contained in everything. So in order for us to be able to get a hold of one particular aspect of it, one particular teaching of it, one particular experience of it, it becomes a current event, and that is precisely what the body allows for the particularization of ultimate totality. But we have to be wise enough to be able to distinguish between the central eternal messages in what we are experiencing in our current events, and not get hung up on the ephemeral expressions that are going to pass away. I find that people far too often get hooked up into the minutiae and miss the central message. So when we're dealing with current events, we should always be looking at what the eternal truth is in those fluctuating events. It's not a question of ephemeral versus eternal. We have to be able to see both and know how to relate to both, but not get hung up on that which we know is going to pass away and give itself over to truth that's even more deep and revealed and intense. So when we look at current events, when we look at the news, we should always be saying to ourselves, what is the eternal message here that is taking these particular forms? Human freedom, human dignity, the safety of children. These are things that never go out of style. And so when we're dealing with current events, these are the things that we should be looking at. And the second point that I want to bring up is how very, very important it is for us to pay attention to every moment of peace that presents itself to us, because peace is immortal eternity itself. The peace of the uncreated cannot really be experienced consciously. The whole idea of the creation is to have the peace of the uncreated, the peace that's in oblivion, simply because it's oblivion, in actuality, so that it can be experienced, so that it is not oblivion, but that it is also eternal peace, but eternal peace that is perceptible, that is palpable. Far too often you hear things like someone say to someone, "Oh, what a beautiful day it is. It's 70 degrees and there are just a few clouds in the sky, and listen to the birds singing and look at the flowers blooming." And someone says, "Yeah, but rain is forecasted for tomorrow." Don't do that. Don't do that. The best way to ensure that there is going to be peace as we continue our journey is to notice the peace that there is now. I've said before, and it's very, very important to know, that the word chai, which means alive in Hebrew, is 18, which is בהוה, which is in the present. We can only be alive and we can only know peace in the continuous present. The minute that we veer out of the continuous present into some remembered past or imagined future, or into the world of speculation, into the world of gossip, into the world of forcing our bodies to think and pronounce and do things that are not eternal, it is in those realms where our mortality can be seized upon, because they're not eternal. So anytime peace has presented itself to us, that is us entering into peace which is eternal, and peace which is eternal entering into our current lives. Always, always notice it. Never ever throw away our peace now because we heard of any kind of event that might be in the future. Eventually we will come to understand what the concepts of the Hebrew atid, which is mistranslated as the future, and avar, which is the Hebrew that is mistranslated as the past. We will come to understand what those really are, and we will understand that they too are actually the present. Don't create an artificial past and present and world of speculation, and never ever sacrifice your actual peace here and now for some event that you're afraid might be, or even hopeful that might be. Always be in the present and notice the peace that's there. There are some telltale signs that a person is approaching the immortal. I wanted to give you an idea of what they are, but I also don't want to present suggestions to your minds, so that you don't start imagining that you're experiencing it, because that's going to take you out of things too. And quite honestly, modern society has conditioned us to be maximally suggestible. So I don't want you to be imagining that you're where you're not yet. with that, so I'll speak in generalities. One of the experiences that we have when we become immortal, we begin to notice that our clothes don't wear out anymore. We begin to notice that we have clothes for an awfully long time, that things don't become threadbare, that colors don't fade as they once did. This dress that I'm wearing, I put it on very deliberately because I have photos of myself wearing this dress, which still looks absolutely new, on the net. I'll try to find a link to one of them. I took a picture of it when I started growing my hair, and that must have been, I don't know, 13-ish years ago, something like that. Now it might be that I know that these caftans are, it claims that the color doesn't fade, that the material is durable. So if it were just one or two dresses, I wouldn't make an issue of it. But it began to be all of my dresses. It began to be my shoes. Pillowcases that eventually would fade and become threadbare didn't. Towels. We used to, right? And my husband is sitting in the background. Like everybody else, we used to have to change our towels every couple of years because the friction would wear them away. We have the same towels in the house for years and years. And what that also means is that we are accumulating mass. Because if the things that we have don't wear out, we begin to accumulate mass. So this is one of the signs that we're becoming eternal. Another one of the signs that we're becoming eternal, that we have walked into eternity and we're going to be going deeper and deeper into it, is that light behaves differently around us. And this was something that I really didn't understand. I was seeing all kinds of anomalies with light. In fact, I have a video, I'll link to it, I'll show you, that one day that the light in the apartment just went like, it looked like something, it looked like space was in the house. And I really didn't know what to make of it, and I was posting pictures of it to my Facebook account and saying, look, to people, look at these things, there are all kinds of things. And later what I came to learn was what light is. And that's when I began to understand that light was behaving differently around me. The Hebrew word ha'almotiim, which means the immortals, is equal to 1,102. That is the same thing as 103. I'll write these in the description box below with God's help. And that is the word avak. That is dust. That is dust. So the Hebrew word almotiim is the Hebrew word for dust. Afa is not really dust. That's more like dryish earth, you know. But real dust, that's avak, and that is ha'almotiim. The Hebrew word for, one of the Hebrew words for eternity is la'ad, meaning forever. That is literally forever. It is equal to 104. So 104 and 103 is 207, That is the value of the Hebrew word or, which is light. So light is ha'almotiim le'ad, the immortals forever. All of the light that we see is their bodies. That's what you're looking at. You're looking at the immortals. And we know that all matter derives from that light, is that concentrated light that takes different forms. And so as we get closer and closer to being one of the immortals ourselves, the light begins to interact with us differently, to be able to instruct us on higher levels as to how to proceed. And this is what I was talking about in one of my earlier discussions, that the immortals are on such a high level that you're actually interacting with light, which is very, very different than sitting down and at a coffee clutch with a human being. And this is the reason why I want very much for human beings to become immortals, so that we can still interact with one another in a human form, rather than wait until we get to the level where we're pure light. It's actually on a higher level to be integrated into living forms. And this is what, please God, I would like to see in the world. As far as colors not fading, that is of tremendous significance too. The Hebrew word for colors is tzvaim. That is equal to 772, which is also the value of haskenim, which is the ancient ones, the elders. And that is also the value of the Hebrew word Shabbat, Shivat, as in the 7 days of creation. Hanavi Yeshayahu talks about O Shivat HaYamim, the light of the 7 days of creation. That is what's being talked about. The ancient ones, seeing them for what they are. And they are the colors in the light. And we begin to be able to understand the colors of the light as the wisdom that these ancient immortals are giving over to us. So colors don't fade in our world. The word Shivat is also Shabbat, Sabbath, and another letter, Ayin, which is would be the secret of Shabbat. So the fact that the colors don't fade anymore is also of tremendous significance. It means that we've touched immortality, and we can see, we understand that the light that we're seeing, the colors that we're seeing, are the immortals themselves, and that is actually their voices, that the colors are their voices, are their instructions. Another one of the experiences we have as when we've approached the level of immortality, which by the way, strangely enough, actually deepens and grows. It's not a one-stop kind of last stop on the train. It keeps growing. One of the experiences we have is time anomalies. Many people were experiencing this, and this is really a shame that people began to experience time anomalies and began to experience slightly different variations of the same reality that they knew, but here and there were some details that were different. Basically everything was the same, but one thing was different. Wasn't the way they remembered it, and they were quite sure that it was different. And unfortunately, people attributed that to the Mandela effect. And the reaction to that was, it's CERN. I know that it's CERN that's doing it. They've opened up the devil's portal. And what kind of witchcraft is this? And it's really a shame that people reacted that way, because it was actually Hashem who was offering you immortality. And rather than realizing the gift that you were being given, you saw it in a negative way. And so the Reaper, who is anything but grim, said, I guess these little figgies aren't ripe yet. You were offered immortality, and threw it back in God's face, saying, what kind of witchcraft is this? And that's really a shame. The result of which is that you remained mortal. There are time anomalies that occur, and when they occur, they bring us into a different iteration of reality. So it has happened that I woke up and my hair had reverted back to being a lot less white than it was. It never goes all the way back to being dark, but I noticed that, like, I have a dark streak again. And I realize the time has been reset. Or my husband has also been talking about noticing this. He's saying yes in the background, nodding his head. That everything is basically the same, but one detail isn't the way he remembers it, and that is walking into what is called in today's parlance, quantum reality, where there are different iterations. The first time that happened to me was during the second war with Lebanon. Sfat was heavily bombarded during that war, and one day I was sitting on the side of my bed, which is right by the window, and a missile went screaming right past the window. I saw the window shatter from the hedef, what do you call it? How do you say hedef? The force of a sound from and it shattered, and I saw a shard hit my leg, and I saw this huge gash in my leg. Suddenly, I saw what appeared to be the same scene, the same room I'm sitting in, kind of like accordion expand out into different versions of the same basic picture, but each was slightly different. And then when it re-accordion collapsed into one reality again, the window was intact, and I had no wound on my leg. And I said, whoa, what was that? There was another time that I got a very, very bad electrical shock, and my husband's stepfather was an electrical engineer, and when he heard the sound that he heard, and what he tells me is that the major circuit breaker jumped, and I was actually cleaning a heater sitting on the floor, and I forgot to unplug it, and here in Israel we work on 220, not 110, and I'm holding a dust cloth that I sprayed with some vinegar and water, and I'm cleaning this, and I completed the circuit. And I start to feel these huge waves going through me. It was rather unpleasant, but what was really weird about it was that it was going in slow motion. So I'm feeling these very, very, very slow waves going through me, and I remember thinking to myself,
I know that there is an electric current going through me, and it must have been going right through my heart, because I was holding the heater with both hands. I had my hand on one, holding it with one and cleaning it with the other. So the current must have been going through my heart. And I remember thinking, I thought that electricity traveled at the speed of light. Why is it so slow? I was looking at it as though it were in slow motion. The next thing I know, my husband is standing at the door, and he's like pale. And he says to me, "Are you okay?" And I just looked at him and I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." And his jaw dropped. And it wasn't until weeks later, when he got over the shock of what had happened, that he explained to me, "Doreen, there's no way that you walked away from that. There's just no way." So things like that began to happen. There were other times that things should have happened that didn't. I should have been cut by something and no mark appeared. Different kinds of things. My husband saw that one time too. I picked up the blades from the blender in the wrong way, and it should have, I felt it begin to cut my hand, and somehow I was able to stop it, and there was no wound there. So my husband saw that. So there are very, very definite changes that happen as we approach having a body that is immortal. Another one of the things that my husband tells me that I cannot verify, I don't know, he says that he does not see me getting any older now for a number of years. Am I right? He nods his head yes. But I don't know whether or not I take that report. I'm sure he's being honest, but I don't know whether or not it's accurate, because my husband is 17 years older than I am. So in his eyes, I always look like a young chickie. And he's also seeing me. He also sees me every day. So I don't know whether or not he would notice the changes. Maybe the people who watch my videos can tell me, do I look very different than I did years ago? I don't know, but my husband tells me that I haven't, I don't seem to be getting older. I don't feel older. I had some very serious arthritis in my hip, which has completely resolved. I don't have the arthritis anymore, it just went away. So these are kinds of some of the signs that begin to happen as we move into the world of what is called emet, which is truth, which is also amet, which means not dead, but it's also eletzmet. It's also the joy of being of the one who's dead. We're both at the same time, both alive and dead in a body, and that is the way it's supposed to be. And with that, I'll end here, and thank you for listening.